ones here. I don't know if you guys want to photocopy those or you already have them. We fought the battle for about 2 years.
Yeah. You stopped the mine.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Yeah, we stopped. Of course, we had some good people in those days.
Yeah.
I almost lost my job over this one.
Wow. Well, I'd
No,
love
it was
to
this
talk.
one here.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe we will take a photocopy of these.
Well, you could take them and then mail them back.
Okay, that would be
save you
great.
some trouble.
Yeah, that would be
I would
great.
do it, but my photocopier won't go that big.
Okay, I've got a big one at my office, so I can
good.
do copies and send them back to you. Thank
You
you.
want to put them in here?
Sure. Perfect.
And then I got a few SNR slides. I didn't know if you wanted to look at them
Oh,
or not.
yeah.
Some of the diversions that were completely dry. And
Okay.
I didn't bring out all my white cloud stuff because I wasn't sure what you wanted, or the Yankee Fork or the Sunbeam, or
Everything. But no, that would be great. I'm sure we have.
it'd be good for you to see them because I've thrown probably 4,000 slides away.
Yeah. It's like what?
Because I didn't think I'd ever get back there. you know,
Right.
and
Yeah. Well, we'd
So-
love to take a look. And see.
I don't know if I want. This is a big bull trout below Alpine Lake in the Altours
Oh my
drainage. Shows you how far up the drainage they get.
Wow.
You know Alpine Lake and the Altours drainage?
Yeah.
It's just below the lake.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Wow. I float that creek in the summer sometimes. It's popular now.
Yeah, there's a story behind this. I took it home and registered as the world's as Idaho State record brook trout.
Oh.
Because I was only, 14 there,
Yeah.
15? And so then finally they got a guy to come and identify it, and it turned out to be a bull trout.
Well, so cool. It's huge.
Okay.
Wow.
Anyway, I got this stuff, and if you think you need any other kind of stuff, I could look it up.
Okay. That sounds good.
Oh, those are all the questions that Pat wanted, the new ones.
Oh, okay.
So, okay.
Fish. Well, we sent you some, and I'm going to start at the beginning, like
No, you just
when
start
you
and
were
do it the
born.
way you want.
Okay.
I don't know. Don't know exactly what we're after here.
So we do these. We've done about 50, I think, videos like this with
Oh,
people who
great.
have history in the Sawtooths, and
Mm-hmm.
we're just trying to capture it so that we have your
Well, yeah,
stories.
if you don't capture it, it's all lost.
We want to hear and we want to
Yeah.
know. So yeah, okay. I think I'm going. Yeah. So Bill, let's just start with when. Well, first will you just say your name for the camera?
William Platts,
William Platts, and it's Platts.
TTS,
Okay, perfect. When were you born, Bill?
1928.
Okay.
Next month I'll be 94.
Wow. What's your birthday? April?
April 18.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
Happy birthday.
yeah.
Awesome.
I didn't realize I'd live this long. I've
It's amazing.
taken better care of myself.
Well, I mean, you're in great shape.
Oh yeah, I still run track and field.
I read about you in the newspaper.
Yeah, I hold 5 world records.
Yeah.
Track and field.
That's amazing.
And that keeps me in shape to hit the high mountain lakes.
Perfect.
They go back and back.
Yeah. It's a good training regimen.
Yeah, I figure a high mountain lake trip's worth about 2 weeks on the track.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. So are you still competing in the track?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Last year I went back to the USA National Championships at Iowa State University.
Wow.
And I was a national champion in 7 events. And the 8th event was the pentathlon, which that's the only reason I went back, was to set a world record in the pentathlon,
Wow.
because a guy from Czechoslovakia has it.
Wow.
And it's a 5-event deal, so I got through the first 4, and now I got enough points to break the world record.
Ooh.
And then the official said, "We're a little behind. We're going to run the 1500 at 11:30." So I said, "Okay," and everybody kind of disappeared. And I went over to watch the javelin people and kept watching my walk and went over, and they were running the 1500. And I went up to the official and I said, "Hey, you're almost an hour early." And he said, we run this on Iowa time, not Idaho time, and I forgot to set my watch
Oh
for
no!
it. So I lost the world record.
Oh no!
Oh, gee.
Well,
Anyway, it was a fun meet.
good, good. That's great.
Uh-huh.
Good shape. Okay, so you were born. Where were you born?
In Magic Valley I was born up on Black Pine Mountain. Do you know where that is?
Mm-hmm.
You know where Malda is?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's that big mountain, Sublet, and then Black Pine.
Okay.
My dad had a sheep ranch at the base of 8 Mile.
Okay.
He had the 8 Mile ranch.
Okay.
Sheep ranch. So.
Wow. Were you born in a hospital? Were you born at home?
Well, they run me into I don't remember it. But
Right.
from what they tell me, they run me into a hospital and took me back.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you have brothers and sisters?
Yeah, 4 of them.
Okay. Were you the oldest or youngest or
Right in the middle.
Right in the middle.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Talk a little, if you want, about your mom and dad. And you said your dad had a sheep farm.
Yeah, my dad had a sheep ranch, and then he sold it
Okay.
just as the Depression hit.
Mm.
And he bought a big car dealership, one in Burley,
Okay.
and a couple of farms, and when the Depression hit, he lost it all. So we moved over to Paul,
Okay.
and he managed to make a living there with a garage and a service station.
Okay.
But the Depression hit him really hard, because it really, just took everything him and his dad had worked for years. So,
Yeah.
well, everybody got hurt during that time, but
Right.
still, it was, for us kids, it was a great time. I'd go back to the Great Depression in a minute over what we got now. Those are good times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was during the Great Depression that we started hitting about, I think, 39 or 40. It was just barely starting to come out of it. About the time we started hitting the Sawtooth Valley.
Okay. And what, would you go on vacation up there, or what was your...
Yeah,
were
we
you-
would, when we were kids, what got me going in the Sawtooth Valley was some of the old farmers around there always went on their big salmon trips steadily. I mean, it was a meat deal. Boy, you could bring a lot of fish back.
Mm-hmm.
And so they would take a couple of us kids, and our job was to, and believe it or not, and the first time we went up, they used pitchforks. Yeah, and
Wow.
it was legal.
Yeah.
Well, no, in '39, they outlawed, and I don't think I was there in '39. I think '40 was the first year. I'm basing this on what I saw at Sunbeam Dam in 1940.
Okay, because it had been blown up. in
Yeah, they'd just
39,
blown
right?
the dam up, and I can remember what it looked like just after they blew it up.
What did it look like?
And we need to talk, that's a big item that
Okay.
we need to talk about that.
We'll come back.
Yeah, because that takes about 20 minutes to get us through that one.
Okay.
Sunbeam Dam has got quite a story behind it, and
Yeah.
nobody's really told it yet.
Yeah.
But anyway, they would take us up, and our job was to go through the pools and the underbanks, and we'd just go in with our bib overalls on, and we'd be in there, and we would chase the salmon over the riffles, and then they would get them.
Wow.
And then when we got a load, we'd head home, because we didn't have coolers or ice in those days. But
Right.
they might grab us, and we'd get up there in the late afternoon, and they'd get a load of salmon. We'd head for home.
Wow.
And then while we were up there, we run into two guys who had been to a high mountain lake, and it was Alpine Lake.
Okay.
And so, I don't know, 41, 42, I started hitting alpine in those lakes in the Alpine Basin.
Mm-hmm.
Got hooked on high mountain lakes. So we would go up and hit the high mountain lakes, and then we'd get some salmon to take home.
Nice.
We got a lot of our salmon. Well, yeah, one time we even rode our bikes to redfish all the way from Paul.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was that
We were
like?
kids. We were really kids then. There was a little gap there. We only tried it 2 years. 1 year we got to Easley and got to ride in a stake bed truck over Galena to Alturas, and we never got to redfish, but one year we did before we got old enough. There was a gap in there when we didn't like to be at the old men, and there was a gap there when we weren't quite ready to go out on our own, but we did. We'd put an army blanket, tie it to our bike, and we'd live off the land.
Wow.
We'd go up a month at a time.
Wow.
Yeah, and so we didn't have any money in those days. I remember Baby Ruth and Butterfinger was 2.5 cents, and we didn't have enough money to buy one.
Wow.
But we'd go down to the Sunny Gulch Sheep Bridge. You remember who that was? I think it washed out.
Okay, but near Sunny Gulch.
Yeah, there was a sheep bridge went across. So, and recreation in those days was different. Of course, this was just the starting of the war.
Mm.
You know, 40, 41, I think 41 we finally got into it, if I remember right.
Mm-hmm.
We'd go down to the Sunny Gulch Sheep Bridge, and you could stand on the bridge and you could watch the salmon coming up. And in the 40s, in the 50s we had a lot of salmon, but not like we did in the 40s. For some reason, during the war years, tremendous runs come in, even though the commercials were taking 80% of them, probably over 80%. It showed you the tremendous number that were coming up the system at that time. And we'd watch these salmon, and if they went to the right, we'd let them go, and if they went to the left, we could get them because it was shallow.
Okay.
And then there was an island down below, the same thing, only it was reversed. The right-hand side was shallow, and the left-hand was deep.
Yeah.
And if sockeye come through, we never bothered them because they come through like antelope. Chinook lollygagged around.
Okay.
And in those days, sockeye was kind of a trash fish. You know, nobody wanted them. We couldn't trade a sockeye for food because they didn't look good. But a silver Chinook, we could get a lot of pork and beans and soup and that kind of stuff out of a salmon. But so we lived pretty good up there.
Nice. And were you with your brothers and sisters or friends, or
Huh?
Were you with your brothers and sisters or friends?
I did later on, but at that time it was just two of us.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Two of us went up. We could get to peekaboo the first night. What we did is instead of going around through Shoshone, make the big circle, we'd cut straight across the desert. There's kind of a wagon road that went out to Kamima.
Okay.
And then it went out, and then it skirted a lobe of the craters of the moon. And we cut through the craters and come into the highway. And we could get to peekaboo. It'd be dark, but we'd sleep in a haystack at peekaboo.
Wow. Wow.
Ate breakfast in a potato field the next morning because we didn't have any money.
Right.
We lived off the land. We had a lot of snowshoe and rough grouse in the recreation area.
Wow.
When we got into, there was at that time, there were tremendous jackrabbit populations in Magic Valley.
Okay.
I remember, now I shudder at what we did because it was so terrible, but I went on many rabbit drives, but I remember one of them, we got over 6,000 jackrabbits in an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Wow.
And the churches put these things on because then the mink farm was buying them for 10 cents a piece. And they fed them back to the mink in those days. And at the same time, we had massive snowshoe populations, especially on Galena Summit and the Big Wood side and over around Stanley Lake. You really don't see those. And the pike have disappeared in the Sawtooths.
Yeah.
Boy, the white clouds was pike of heaven in those. When I did the white cloud studies, I've been to every lake in the White Clouds, 120 of them. I got them all documented, wrote reports on them. Been to every lake in the Pioneers, every lake in the Boulders, and I haven't been to every lake in the Sawtooths because there's too many of them. Yeah. But I got to a lot of them.
I bet. Yeah.
So anyway, I never snowshoes all the way through that country, especially there's quite a few around Stanley Lake. We camped at Stanley Lake sometimes.
Okay.
To get into Sawtooth Lake and Barren Lakes and those over there.
Yep. Yeah.
And but then we only had to do our bikes for a couple times, and we finally got a Model A, an old used Model A.
Okay.
And then a little later, I bought a old Chevrolet for about, I think it was 1932 Boxland for $50, and that included a tool kit.
Wow.
A full tool kit. And then once we got transportation, then we could come up anytime we wanted.
Yeah.
And we'd spend a lot of the summer up there. We'd go home in Thin Peaks. As soon as we got enough money for gas, we'd head. Because down there, you're living in that dry, dusty sagebrush, and the Sawtooth Valley was utopia to us. I mean, it was, every time we got enough money, we'd head for and especially when the salmon season on, because, well, especially during the war years, there wasn't any money. Mm-hmm. So it was hard work getting enough to buy a few gallons of gas, but then you had to have a stamp. Yeah, you gotta, every 2 weeks you got a stamp for, I think, 4 gallons or something like that. So we would have to, sometimes if we had the money, there were some people in town would get the stamps, but they never drove, so we'd talk them out of a stamp or two. And you get enough stamps to get enough gas to get up there and back.
Okay.
But gas was only 19 cents a gallon at that time.
Yeah.
So, which was a lot of money then.
Yeah.
So every time we got enough money, we'd head for the Sawtooth Valley.
Nice.
And then the salmon run, we always figured you made money when you went up because you could bring a load of salmon back.
Mm-hmm. And where would you said you would trade the salmon for pork or beans, where would you do that?
Redfish, in those days it was different. There wasn't a lot of recreation years because we camped right on the beach. Well, we only had a little blanket, so the sand was soft. Mm-hmm. And the first hour and a half to 2 hours it was warm.
Yeah.
After that it got cold. But so that's the only camp there, and I think it was a halfway spot between Magic Valley, Boise, and Salmon and that country, because the camping would kind of build up in the evening, and then everybody'd leave in the morning.
Okay.
And there were not many people came that stayed 4, 5, 6 days, 7 days.
Right.
So we would wait for a salmon to be traded. It had to look really silvery.
Yeah.
You know, they turned kind of dark after you got them out for a while.
Uh-huh.
So we'd wait till about noon, and then we'd go down to Sunny Gulch Sheep Ridge and grab one and bring it back. And then when everybody was around the camp that evening, then we'd go around the camp seeing who looked interested, and maybe get 2 camps bidding on it. And
Yeah.
we lived pretty good at that time.
Nice. You're a businessman.
And then, yeah, I remember on one of the trips, we slept out in sleeping bags on the lawn, and I got up and we decided, well, let's go to Redfish today. So we got our bikes and got an army blanket, and I drove by my dad's garage and I said, hey, we're going to Redfish, and he said, okay, and that was it. Kept on going. Told him I'd be back a day before school started.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you did that most summers growing up? And...
Yeah, but most of the time we had vehicles, or somebody would take us, or pretty soon we'd talk my dad into going. He had an old Plymouth, probably about a 1926 Plymouth. And the speed limit was 35 miles an hour.
Okay.
But his Plymouth would only go 25. So it took a long time to get up there.
Yeah. What was Galena Pass like?
Oh, we were scared of Galena.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we pushed up, and we almost had to push down too because the road was soft. See, the asphalt ended just north of Ketchum.
Okay.
So it's all sand and a little gravel going over Galena. And we figured it took about 5 to 8 gallons of water to get over Galena because the Model A's had little radiators, and it'd take about 3 fill-ups to get to the top of Galena.
Wow.
And then the first few times I went to Galena scared me to death because the road went right down Camp Creek.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, that was brutal.
Yeah.
And then when we got to the bottom, there was a big line there was a remnant population of big lodge pole. And the old man told me that even before Camp Creek, the road really went down steeper. And they said people would cut a lodge pole, put it behind their car to come down that hill, and then when they got down, they'd release the pole. And some of the remnants of the pole were still there.
Wow.
That was that'd be about 1940.
Wow.
And then in the mid-1950s, they built a new road and it went clear out to the northeast and come back and come around. Well, then it wasn't so bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More gradual.
Yeah. And because you not only had to fill water cans up to get over it, when it come right up the draw, you had to fill water cans to come back. But then when they built that big long road going out, then from then on you could make it maybe one trip without. But you'd be going pretty soon. You'd have water, just a big geyser out in front of you.
Wow.
We'd try and stop before then. But,
Yeah.
And then you had to keep the motors running to put the cold water in so you didn't split the block. So it was quite a job getting over Galena.
Yeah. Wow. So, you grew up and then you went to college and studied fisheries, right?
Yeah, I got a BS at Idaho State University in conservation, education, and a master's at Utah State University in wildlife, and then I got a PhD in fisheries, and I majored in fluvial geomorphology.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's the reason I got into hydro and salmon and steelhead and all that.
Yeah.
Started, and then pretty soon they were paying me to go to high mountain lakes and the Sawtooths.
Perfect.
And the White Clouds.
Perfect. Well, I'd love to hear your stories about the White Clouds. I know, didn't you name some of the lakes?
Yeah, I named a lot of the lakes in the White Clouds, probably over half, maybe, because only the lower lakes are named at that time.
Right.
And when I went in, I started on the Big Boulder chain. And I think it had 12 lakes in it, or the other one had 14 or 16 or something, and went around and got noisy and quiet. And if you look, I tried to name each lake based on the geologic setting, geomorphic setting. If you look at those lakes in there, each one, if you go in there, you'll see it with a setting that kind of tipped it off.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting to do it in those days, and probably still. There was criteria. It can't be named after anybody who's still alive, and has to fit the situation, and can't have any swear words in it. So I went through the protocol with the USGS on how to do it. And then when I got through it, then I filled all these sheets out, because I figured these lakes in the White Clouds are so beautiful that to call one number 12 to me was just, I couldn't be it. So I sent them all in, and then it had to go out for review. And the only bad review I got was from Idaho Fish and Game, because they said if we change the names, they're going to have to change all their hatchery records.
Oh.
But USGS overruled them.
Good.
But everybody else thought it was a good idea. Ernie Day and Bruce Bowler and Franklin Jones and Jerry Jane, they thought it was great to get them named.
Good.
Yeah.
Do you remember about what year that was that you were naming them?
I'm guessing it's late 60s, early 70s.
Okay.
Yeah. That was when we had the big battles, and you'll see in those news releases, the big guys, the guys that really got it, like Ernie Day and Bruce Bowler and Franklin Jones and Bill Miners and Rob Brady. I mean, there was tremendous individuals, and they had a lot of power in those days. Wasn't for them, we would have lost the White Clouds.
Yeah.
So what I did, because I had all the background and all the data, I swept the state from Weiser to Idaho Falls, giving presentations against, and the Forest Service kind of tried to put the clamps on me, but really in the Forest Service they kind of liked it.
Yeah.
So I managed, I almost got fired on that one news release. I come home one night and my wife said, "Hey, you got to get to the regional office, you're in trouble." They called and said they want you there at 8 in the morning. Well, that was about 7 or 8 at night, so I drove all night
Oh, wow.
to get to the, I walked into the regional office and I thought it might be over. And they said, we're kind of in trouble. But I think what happened is that Ernie Day and Jerry Jean got to the regional forester because he finally said, this probably is a positive thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so then from then on I got some pretty good support and on the forest.
Yeah.
But we had to do that. If it hadn't been for those 5 guys, we would have lost the white clouds. That mining venture was so big and the settling ponds were so massive. The beautiful Boulder Creek Meadows was going to be their big settling pond,
Mm-hmm.
It would have decimated the East Fork. It could have really it could have really hurt the salmon run coming in. To me, that's the #1 battle that's been won environmentally in Idaho.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because we had those great guys at that time.
I'm so grateful to them and you, and thank you.
Yeah.
So was that your presentations that you would give? Was it mostly about how this would affect the salmon?
Yeah, what I did is I took them through the blackbird situation and the Silver King and what was the other one? And showed them this is what's happening. Every mine that has come in has had, and I explained to them that the Forest Service issues permits on what the mining company says they're going to do, never on what they are going to do. And I said, this is what happened in Blackbird and Panther Creek. The Blackbird mine alone, and then the one up above too, completely eliminated the salmon run, steelhead run, and the bull trout in Panther Creek. I mean, just wiped them right out for years and decades. And so, and that was small compared to what we're going to have in the white clouds. So I showed him that if this comes in, it's guaranteed to knock out the East Fork of the salmon. Well, then the mining company got on me really bad. Al Teskey was one of the directors at that time. He headed up their whatever their deal was, and they took me on. But anyway, we won out, and a lot of that too was due to Cecil Andrus.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you. On behalf of all of us who love the white clouds, I'm glad.
That's my favorite lakes. It's really interesting because of the bedrock situation and the height and elevation. The lakes in the Sawtooths are really different than the lakes in the White Clouds. And the lakes in the Pioneers are different, and the lakes in the Boulders, they don't even hardly resemble each other.
Yeah.
But to me, the lakes in the White Clouds are very gentle lakes, open, have a lot of good soil around them. In the Sawtooths, they're more rugged, bouldery, and I really fell in love with the White Cloud lakes. Spent a lot of time in there.
Yeah. They're special. It's a special place.
Yeah, it's a special place.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're taking good care of it now. Really good care of it.
Yeah.
And I can really see a difference too. It's a shame we don't have big salmon runs now, because the salmon spawning potential in the Sawtooth Valley is many times better now than it was historically.
Why is that?
Many times. Well, because of diversions.
Oh, yeah.
There was a big diversion right there, kind of where Pettit comes in. A big, massive diversion. When they put that diversion in, it was total. It dried it up.
Wow.
And then there was another diversion down at 4th of July that pretty well dried the river up.
Okay.
And then Pole Creek was diverted. And then there was an intermediate diversion, and I'm not sure where that was, but we had 2 of them. After the 4th of July, we kept checking these diversions, because the minute they blocked the water off, it would be full of salmon, and you could just go down and pick them up. And they were going to die anyway, so we'd load up with salmon below those diversions and take them home.
Yeah.
and you just go back. They were in pools, their backs are out of the water,
Mm-hmm.
and you could just pick them up and take them home.
Wow.
And they were good fish because they're just new into the system.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh. And it was a shame too, and that's what really limited sockeye. Alturas, I think, was a better sockeye fishery than redfish. It was more productive, and I think in pre-diversion times that you know, we had sockeye and Stanley, redfish, pettit, and Alturas.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you read the records.
Yeah.
What they don't, they also forgot that we also had some sockeye and Perkins and little redfish.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, actually they used those two lakes to a much smaller extent.
Yeah.
But then, because sockeye, the first time I ever saw sockeye, I think, was around the 15th of July. They come in a little late
Yeah.
and fast. Boy, they come in like antelope.
Uh-huh.
It was all business with sockeye. They didn't lollygag like Chinook.
Right.
And they come through so fast. But the diversions went in before the sockeye hit. Right after the 4th of July, the diversions would start taking effect. By the 15th, usually they had the river completely dry. So that eliminated all the sockeye above Redfish Lake.
Right.
And if sockeye, if the 4 dams were taken out on the lower Snake, which was, I was really pushing for the salmon people in these videos, we could get sockeye back again into Alturas and Pettit.
Yeah.
And Perkins.
Mm-hmm.
Even Perkins had some sockeye in it historically.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and I mean, at the Sheep Bridge, when sockeye come around the bend, they were by us.
Yeah.
Boy, they were just like bullets.
Yeah.
And when they hit the mouth of Redfish Lake Creek, the next morning they were in the lake. It was just, or in Little Redfish Lake. It was just, they were quite a fish.
Yeah.
But I was surprised that people did not like them in those days. Fish and Game purposely eradicated sockeye salmon and then put up barriers so they couldn't get reestablished.
Yeah.
We need to get sockeye reestablished in Alturas and Stanley as quick as possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, and the thing that really saved us, and this gets us back to Sunbeam Dam, is that even when Sunbeam Dam was in place,
right,
and water going over the top of it, there was still some sockeye coming back to the dam because the kokanee themselves can bring sockeye back.
Mm-hmm.
It's small, but it's very valuable.
Right.
And that's it. Chinook will go extinct eventually in the Salmon River drainage. But as long as we've got kokanee, we need to really take care of the kokanee population in Alturas and redfish, and get them going in the others too. Because we can always bring sockeye back as long as we got kokanee.
Yeah, their genetic material.
Yeah, in the DNA there's still a very small percentage, but still, and I see this in Warm Lake. I've seen sockeye spawn on the Poverty in the South Fork, and I've seen sockeye in Warm Lake. Well, when they put the dam in at Warm Lake, that eliminated the sockeye run in the South Fork of the Salmon River.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's talk more about Sunbeam. And so you think you first saw Sunbeam in about 1930?
I'm guessing 40 because
40?
I didn't see Sunbeam before it was blown out. So I'm guessing around 1940. And, they'd blown a hole in it in 34, but it was a it was a chute.
Okay.
Yeah, the fish just couldn't handle it.
Yeah.
And then in about 1939, Fish and Game come up with $750, which was a mistake. They should have come up with a couple thousand because they blew a little piece of it out. But even in 40 and 41 and 42, fish had a hard time getting by Sunbeam because it looked like Dagger Falls.
Oh, wow.
When they blew it up, all the material fell down in the channel, and it was quite a rapid to begin with.
Yeah.
But, and at that, you know, if you remember how Sunbeam Dam went over, it developed a tremendous plunge pool below it.
Mm-hmm.
And in the first year, Sunbeam was a tremendous salmon fishery because the heavy sediments hadn't filled the plunge pool up yet. So they'd work their way out on the dam and down on the rocky cliffs. And then some people would come across below and they'd come up and fish the other side. There was really a nice bench on the other side. So there were two big pools then. Mm-hmm. And these pools have got filled up now. But they blew out the wrong side of the dam. The river does not want to go that direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it turned into a big sediment producer. It still is today. Mm-hmm. It's still producing a lot of sediment that shouldn't be going downriver.
Right.
The Salmon River built a really nice meander that went to grade. Mm-hmm. But I think they blew that side out because at that time maybe still some of the hydro facilities were still in on the other side. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't know why they would pick that side, but what they did now is they forced the river to try and build a back oxbow.
Right.
To stay in grade. So what it's doing is the number of the footage in here on the curve. Uh-huh. The river now is taking out the mountain to build a curve of equal distance because it has to go to grade. All rivers go to grade.
Yeah.
And if you look at the mouth of the Yankee Fork, you'll see that it's still fighting grade because its grade is higher than the Yankee Fork. Oh. And rivers don't work that way.
Right.
The Yankee Fork has to grade to the salmon, not the salmon to the Yankee
right.
Fork.
Yeah.
So.
Huh.
And so Sunbeam, and you know, when I look back at Sunbeam, you know, almost, well, over 100 years ago, you wonder what the mindset was, because they didn't think nothing of knocking out that tremendous salmon steelhead sockeye run with a dam for a mine that was losing money and lost stockholders a lot of money.
Yeah.
And only operated 1 year. But what would that be? But 20 some years later, the dam is still blocking salmon.
Right.
So 20 years in there with nothing going on, they let the salmon run go to pieces up above. And I think their mindset was kind of bad. And then I suddenly realized, you know, our mindset today is still as much greed in as that, because we're willing to knock out the whole salmon steelhead sockeye run in the Snake River system for 4 dams, 4 little dams where you get the power from somewhere else. And it just doesn't, so I'm thinking, you know, 50 years from now they're going to look back at us and wonder, what in the devil were those people thinking about?
Yeah.
And so Sunbeam's got quite a story behind it. And but when Sunbeam was in those first few years during the war years, when salmon are having such a hard time getting past Sunbeam, the Yankee Fork was tremendous. It was the Yankee Fork was black with salmon in those days.
Yeah.
Especially the West Fork.
Wow.
So we usually went to the West Fork
to
get our salmon.
Yeah. When did the Yankee Fork start getting dredged? I don't remember.
Well, it was dredged about 1940 to 1942, and then the war years shut it down because they couldn't get gas. So from 42 to 46, sometimes we'd see the Yankee Fork clear. Oh, wow. But because we had all the pollution coming off of the Jordan Creek and the Grouse Creek mines, and Jordan Creek mine was actually operating some in those days, so was Grouse Creek. Even then, a lot of times the Yankee Fork would be so muddied up that we'd have to go to the West Fork.
Okay. And
so then in 46, 47, after the war, and they could get gas again and oil and fuel, they started it back up. And then they dredged 5 or 6 miles of it. And then the one dredge shut down, and then Simplot come in with the dredge that's there now.
Right.
And he took about another mile of it, and then till he run to his property line. So the Yankee Fork was running muddy even in 52 and 53.
Wow.
I mean, it was terrible. And you could see the effects way downriver from the dredging operations on Yankee Fork.
Yeah. Huh.
It makes you wonder because the dredging really didn't get that much gold.
Right.
It's just, and it took more. It's taken more money to rehabilitate by far Yankee Fork than the miners got out of it.
Yeah.
And that's pretty typical. If you look at the Blackbird or even the Bunker Hill, the big ones up above, and you look at the Superfund money that comes in, and when it comes to hard rock mining, it's awful hard to make more money than it's going to take to put it back together.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Too short-sighted, I think people
Yeah.
people are. Salmon in the Sawtooth Valley, like when did you start noticing their numbers? You know, you used to be able to stand on that sheep bridge and see them coming up, and when did you start noticing their numbers declining?
Numbers were pretty good until about 1958, 59.
Mm-hmm.
Then they really started plummeting, and but because at that time they only had 4 dams to go over.
Right.
And then when Lower Monumental and Ice Harbor first, Ice Harbor wasn't so bad. Lower Monumental was a bad one. When those 4 started coming in the 60s and 70s, actually there was still some salmon there in the early 80s, and then they really started plummeting. Sockeye really started going to pieces. 80s, 90s, and the 2000, 2010. Like last year, I think was the lowest number of steelhead we've ever had come back to Idaho.
Yeah.
And I keep telling people, I don't think too many believe me, but the perfect storm is coming. The smolt to adult return is so critical in keeping a population going, and it's down to where they're not replacing themselves. And all we got to do is get a big drought or go back into a Great Recession or Great Depression or something like that, where there's no money or something like that. So, and the ocean's getting warm. I mean, the perfect storm's coming when the salmon and steelhead just aren't going to make it into Idaho.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be within the next decade or 2.
Yeah. We got to get those dams out before then.
I don't think we will, but it's criminal.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, it is. Well.
There was a time when we could have got them out, but that's another story.
Yeah. I'm still hopeful. I don't know. You have to be a little hopeful. Let's talk about Stanley a little bit more. I have some notes, I think, from you and Gary. The Stanley Bathhouse.
Oh boy, yeah.
What was that?
We would ride our bikes all the way every night. We just loved the bathhouse. It was really something. And it was right alongside the road.
Okay.
And where they got the hot water, there must have been a hot water spring right in there somewhere they got it.
Yeah. Was it on Valley Creek?
Yeah.
The bathhouse? Okay, yeah.
But it was up on the kind of the plateau.
Okay.
I don't know how they got the water in there. Well, we didn't pay attention to
Right.
that. But it was a nice building, all walled in, had dressing rooms, had benches you could sit on, and then it had this concrete pool, had steps going down into it, and there was always soap available, and it was a community bathhouse for Stanley. And you'd wait, and you had a flashlight or a lantern or something. And if there was a light in there, then you just sit out and waited your turn. And so we had our little Boy Scout lights, and we'd put it through a knot hole. We're in here. Otherwise, people would come storming in.
Yeah.
And but you know, after you're messing with salmon and laying in the sand and hitting high mountain lakes, that was kind of a highlight of the trip a lot, was going to that bathhouse.
Yeah.
But then the BLM, I think, took it out.
Oh, wow.
And I don't know why they took it out, because it was, the whole town of Stanley used it.
Yeah.
I don't imagine there were too many showers or bathtubs in Stanley at that time.
Right.
And Redfish Lake is pretty cold,
Yeah.
you know. And so in the evening, we would, after supper, we'd get on our bikes and head in, and usually be dark when we'd hit the bathhouse. But we all tried to hit it almost every day.
Nice.
So
That sounds good. Were there any other hot springs that you would visit? I know.
there was one down by Sunbeam,
Okay. Yeah.
but it was pretty crude.
Mm.
And then there was one they called Sacagawea. Do you remember that one?
There's one by Grandjean that they call Sacagawea. Is that?
when we come up the other side.
Okay. Yeah.
And then sometimes, well, later on in life, we'd hit the one at Lowman. That's a nice one. That's a good one. The one at Sunbeam was pretty crude. And then there was one further downriver. Well, at one time, that was a bathhouse. I think they took it out.
Oh, wow.
If I remember right. Yeah.
Yeah.
They had a nice bathhouse right on the side of the river there.
Nice.
But I think it's missing now.
Yeah.
That's the only, that's a good thing, or else the kids would have looked terrible hadn't been for the bathhouse.
Yeah. Needed a place to clean up. You mentioned, I think, the Sawtooth mountain slide or earthquake.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, the Sawtooth Fault, nobody knew we had one in those days. But the Sawtooth Fault, really the epicenter's over there near Dagger. So it isn't that far to Sawtooth. We were camped, let's see, we had the old Model A, and 4 of us kids were camped at Stanley, Lake Stanley. That's before we knew there was a road up Iron Creek. So we walked all the way around the big mountain, clear over there to get into Sawtooth. We always headed for Sawtooth Lake because we thought it had Atlantic salmon in. You know, one time they did put Atlantic salmon, Sunapee Goldens. Well, we always caught Sunapee Goldens in Sawtooth Lake.
Okay.
So we took off late one morning, come around, and we got into the Sawtooth drainage, and we must have got tired, or it got dark or something. We camped in a little flat there. Out of the middle of the night, about 1 or 2 or 3, this kind of shaking started, and all of a sudden, a tremendous roar up the canyon from us, and we couldn't figure out what it was. So we all jumped up out of our sleeping bags, wondering which way to run. And it was pitch dark, and we didn't know what to do, so we just stayed and kept watching, you know. Up the canyon, you couldn't see much. And then all of a sudden, the whole canyon was filled with dust. And we were breathing dust. And then it was all over. So the next morning we got up and started working our way into Sawtooth Lake, and when we got up, a big V had come off of the side of the mountain. Part of it, and it had come down and come across Sawtooth, the creek coming out of Sawtooth Lake, and well, it must have covered 300-400 yards. So if you had been camped in there, you'd have been dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. That was in the 40s, probably.
Yeah, that'd be probably 42, 43.
Okay.
But it was really scary because we didn't know what was happening.
Right. It was dark.
Well, I didn't know anything about earthquakes at those days, and
Yeah.
I didn't know there was a fault coming through there. So
Right.
we never. At the beginning, it was kind of mild. We thought it was a herd of deer, or elk, or something coming to us. Wondering which way we have to go to get out of this.
Yeah.
Then when the dust come, we kind of started hitting us. Then we figured that something was happening in there. It wasn't until the next morning when we went by it and over it that we really saw what happened.
Yeah.
But that's pretty common in that country.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Crazy geology. Huh. You said you thought maybe it was a herd of deer, elk. Did you encounter back then a lot of, like, some of that big game, deer and elk?
Yeah, we hunted a lot, but in those days, Sawtooth Valley was really poor hunting. There wasn't many elk in those days. Quite a few now, but in those days they were very scarce. Quite a few deer, but in Magic Valley we were so close to Mount Harrison and Independence that we always went deer hunting there. So
Gotcha.
we did have to kill quite a few snowshoes and rough grouse. So
Yeah.
yeah, which probably was illegal, had to be, but we learned how to cook them pretty good over a spit. Yeah, and snowshoes are real easy to get. We always had a little 22 with us. Rough grouse were a little more difficult. So, yeah, well, I was walking into that same time that we hit that earthquake in the Sawtooth, going into Sawtooth Lake. We went by a rough grouse nest, and the last guy in the trail, the hand come off the nest and hit him right in the back of the head. And he screamed and hollered. Yeah, but there were a lot of rough grouse. You don't see that many nowadays in there, but there were.
Yeah.
And that's pretty typical. And rabbits have just kind of disappeared from Idaho.
Yeah.
There used to be millions and millions of them.
Wow.
And that's probably the canary in the coal mine.
Yeah.
The jackrabbits can't make it. That's what I've always told the BLM. Until you learn how to raise jackrabbits, you'll never know how to keep sage grouse going.
Yeah.
Yeah, the two have pretty much identical habitat requirements.
Right. Connected. Huh.
Yeah. But you'd see them along roadkills along the side of the road going up Galena Summit.
Wow.
Probably from people going down fast.
Right.
There was a real population of them. A lot of times we'd stop in at Easley and camp because that's where the Girl Scout camp was. And that country was just loaded with snowshoe rabbits. So it did go hungry in that country.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always had something good to eat.
Good. Oh, is that me or? I'm good. Did you ever encounter or see any like wolves or mountain lions or bears or anything back there when you were?
We saw bears quite a bit, especially going into Dagger. When we'd get up and go into Dagger Falls and come out, we'd usually see a bear or two. But I saw very few around redfish. At Alpine once, when we was climbing snowy sides, I saw a cougar run across a meadow. But I don't remember, my whole life I've lived in the backcountry, and I've only seen 7 cougars.
Wow.
Yeah, and but I don't remember, that's the only cougar I can remember seeing. We see their tracks, but I never did see them. That's the only one I remember seeing. We thought we saw a wolf one time. I'm trying to remember where that was, and I reported it to Fish and Game that we thought it was a wolf. Run across a moraine, but it could have been a coyote. But we thought it was a wolf. You know, us kids thought it was a wolf.
Yeah.
But it may have been a coyote, or it couldn't have been a fox because we would have known the tail on that.
Right.
So that's the closest I come to seeing a wolf. I don't think there were hardly any in there at that time.
Yeah. No.
And I don't think there were many cougars in there at that time either.
Yeah.
And hardly any elk, but a lot of deer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. In the 40s and 50s, or any time, do you remember a big tribal presence? Were you running into like Nez Perce or Shoshone-Bannock or anything?
Hardly ever.
Yeah.
See, in those days, they had to abide by the same regulations we did. That was before the Bronco case and the other case that they won. I wish they'd have been there because we did find arrowheads and stuff in there. Yeah, I got about 600 arrowheads, but I don't know where they come from anymore, but some of them come from up there.
Yeah.
Especially there at the mouth of Valley Creek.
Oh yeah, okay.
You could find them.
Huh.
And at those times I didn't know what a portal and a pestles and mortars were. But there were some of those, but I didn't know what they were. All I did was pick up a few arrowheads in there. But you know, I thought there'd be a lot of arrowheads in the Decker Flat area. Didn't find much. But I didn't, the first time I saw Indians was later on, and that was in the South Fork of the Salmon. The Nez Perce were coming in there. But you know, going back 20 to 30,000 years ago, when the first natives really come in, the first Native Americans come in to the Sawtooth Valley, they must have thought they found utopia, because boy, they suddenly come in where they could, in one day they could get enough fish to last them the whole year. I mean, they were just in there like cordwood in the 40s. And it's interesting. The trouble is in the 50s is the first time we got any real data. And I can only look at the data and the work that I did in the 50s and 60s and try and relate it back to the 40s, trying to, how much bigger was the run in the 40s and the 50s. And I can't come up with it. I know it was bigger, but I don't know how much bigger. We saw a lot more fish in the 40s than we did in the 50s. Especially in the Yankee Fork, and even in Bear Valley. And in Frenchman Creek, we used to like to go to Frenchman and Smiley. From Beaver Creek, for some reason, was not a good salmon creek. Pole Creek could have had some salmon, but the diversion kept them out. But Frenchman Creek was really loaded with salmon in those days. And by then they were so easy to get. I imagine the Native Americans, and for thousands and thousands of years, could make a living out of Frenchman and Smiley Creek. Frenchman Creek actually had more fish than Smiley. And I don't know why, but it was, Frenchman Creek was really built for salmon. The trouble is now they're not getting back there anymore. Our rearing area isn't being used in the Sawtooths anymore. Which is a shame. Real shame, because the only way you can have large salmon runs is to max out your rearing areas. And that's one of the problems now with the Sawtooth hatchery. Too much spawning below the hatchery. There's no rearing area below the hatchery. So you got to get those salmon up in the rearing areas if you're going to get some smolts out of them. So, and you really, historically, when we had those massive salmon runs, hardly any salmon spawned below the hatchery. Very, very seldom. There'd be, you know where the steel bridge is? I think they call it the Buckhorn Bridge or something nowadays. We always called it the steel bridge because we fished a hole above it, above the steel bridge, about a quarter mile. And as you go to the first gap below the steel bridge, there'd be 2 or 3 reds there. And then there'd be a couple down by the sheep bridge, and then there'd be 3 or 4 at the island. But salmon very seldom ever spawned in that area, even though you had massive salmon runs. It's not a good spawning area. There's too much energy, and when the young come out, there's no rearing area for them. So they got to be up. What really pumped that big salmon run up was the area above 4th of July Creek. Alturas and all that country in there, because it was really low energy. It was very productive. Alturas is so much more productive than redfish is. And I still think historically Alturas may have had the largest salmon run.
Well, now the Shoshone-Bannock have their project, I can't remember if it's at Alturas or Pettit, where they've got...
Alturas and Pettit. That's good. I'd like to see them get started in Alturas. And if you get them in Alturas, you're going to get them into Pettit. You don't need to worry about Pettit now. The thing to do is get them started in Alturas, because that could be a massive run, and the strays alone would take care of Pettit. And you know, there was a big sockeye run in those days, one up Valley Creek. And but it was really interesting. We say they stray, and I walked in Valley Creek continuously because the last salmon that you could get out of the valley was out of Valley Creek. By then the salmon were dead over the rest of the area, or they were beyond eating. You know, in those days the salmon had to be pretty fresh or you wouldn't take it. There were so many of them. And the salmon would come up, the sockeye would come up, and 100% of them would turn into Stanley Creek.
Oh wow.
And I never saw a stray
Yeah.
above Valley Creek. And there should have been. There
Right.
should have been strays above Valley Creek.
So fascinating.
But Stanley the water in Stanley had a taste or smell to it and the right type of minerals, they just knew exactly
Yeah.
where they had to go. Because Valley Creek was really an easier stream to go.
Right. Stay at Valley Creek.
But then they put, when they eradicated, they didn't want sockeye coming back into Stanley or and they didn't want them into Alturas or anywhere. So
Yeah.
they put those diversions in so they couldn't come back. Yellow belly.
Yeah.
And they're still there today.
Yeah. Why did they do that initially?
I think they were, that's about the time I come on with Fish and Game, about the time they did Stanley Lake, and I think Forey Houck was project leader on that. Well, at that time, salmon fishermen were pretty crude. We were still fishing with daredevils, we didn't know how to catch salmon in deep water. Nowadays, they can catch salmon all the way to the mouth. Fishermen have really come on with advanced stuff. They've really learned how to do it.
Yeah.
And there was only Ted Trueblood and another guy that I knew that could catch sockeye. And I've seen them catch sockeye at the mouth of redfish. The main sockeye fishery at that time, for those people who did fish sockeye, where Redfish Lake comes in and it comes out and there's a little back pool there. They were fishing in there with white flies, and I'd go down and watch them once in a while. And they could catch sockeye. But nobody wanted them,
Right.
so you threw them back or got rid of them. I never did see anybody keep one.
Yeah.
And really, when I go to Alaska, I still think sockeye salmon is the best eating fish we've got. I don't know why. Even the big guys had me in those days bad mouthing. And bull trout, we were told by when the salmon run, or we got our salmon, a lot of times we'd go work bull trout. 4th of July had a tremendous bull trout run at that time. So did Fishhook Creek.
Yeah.
And so we'd go in there and work those big bull trout. And the older men would have us throw them in the willows. Don't put them back in. Bull trout was really a bad hombre at that time. Worse than squawfish or
Wow.
yeah. They did not like bull trout. They told us they were unedible, but I finally ate some that I caught and found out they're pretty darn good.
Yeah.
That big one I showed you the picture of,
Yeah.
that was way up Alpine Creek. And there was another big bull trout one run. I don't see those bull trout runs anymore, and I think a lot of it has to do with the nutrition in the system. When we were putting thousands and thousands of salmon in there, that was tremendous fertilization.
Yeah.
And you had fertilization coming all the way from near the confluence of the middle headwater of the Salmon River, Frenchman Creek, Smiley, all those were masses of dead carcasses.
Yeah.
The Decker Flat was masses of dead carcasses. And I think there was just a lot of food being produced in those streams, and bull trout had it really nice.
Yeah.
And not only had the eggs and the young to feed on,
Yeah.
but nowadays there's no young to feed on.
Right.
There's no smolts to feed on. There's no little ones. And there's not as much fertility for the aquatic insects to start building a biomass up for bull trout. So I think we lost our bull trout run. Probably some temperature warming had a little bit to it, but I think we lost our bull trout runs because we lost the salmon runs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish we had some deal, because the Alturas Creek had a tremendous run of bull trout.
Wow.
At that time, and Alturas was fairly big. I never caught any out of Alturas, but Alpine was small enough that in those days we just had little teeny old steel poles, and we could fish little creeks, but we couldn't fish big stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned Ted Trueblood. I've heard stories about him. So
Oh yeah, I tried to arrest him one time.
Really?
Yeah.
Why? Yeah.
Well, I was the CO, game warden at Lewiston, and I had the first jet boat that the department had. In fact, one of the few on the river. And I got sent to Lewiston for two reasons. One was to get rid of the sturgeon set line illegal fishery, and the other one was to get rid of the deer killing, where there was a outfit out of Spokane were coming in. That's when the Dumac and the Joseph and all those had thousands and thousands of deer, and they were moving deer in and making hamburger out of them and selling it.
Oh, wow.
And they had a big deal going in. But anyway, I was in the jet boat and I was going upriver and I went by the mouth of Salmon and I got my spotting scope out and I looked way up there on the beach and here's two guys and I could see they were catching steelhead.
Yeah.
And but it was just enough. I couldn't see if they were putting them back and I thought, boy, those guys are over their limit.
Yeah.
So I climbed this big mountain because it's the only way I could get across that they wouldn't see me. And I come down another draw through the brush and stuff, and I walked out on the bank. And I went down there and I said, "You guys are catching a lot of fish, aren't you?" And I didn't know it was Ted, and it was the president of Evinrude Johnson Motors. Yeah, and he said, "Yeah." He said, "Yeah, we're catching a lot of them." And I said, "Well, I knew I had a ticket, you know." And I said, "Well, can I see him?" And he said, and he called me Sonny. So I looked pretty young in those. He says, "Sonny, we throw them all back." And they didn't have a fish. And that's the first time, you know, we always fished with big red daredevils.
Okay.
And he had big, nice streamer flies that he tied right on sight. That's the first time that I knew that you could catch steelhead on a fly.
Oh, wow.
And him and the president of Johnson Motors were steadily just catching steelhead there right and left, and then they'd turn them loose.
Wow.
And so, and then I worked a lot with Ted Trueblood after that.
Okay.
Yeah, I got to know him real well and spent a lot of, him and I were in the Iowa Wildlife Federation. We worked on a lot of committees together and went on trips together, but I'd have arrested him there.
Throw him back. Okay.
Yeah, throw him back.
Oh.
But he was, Ted Trueblood was one of the first guys that could actually catch salmon legally in Bear Valley and Elk Creek with a fly.
Wow.
He fished a lot below the Elk Creek Bridge.
Okay.
And then he fished a lot right there at that Cache Creek, where Cache Creek comes in. He fished that area there, and then he fished below the Elk Creek Bridge. And while us slobs were getting them out with our hands and spears, Ted Trueblood was catching them with a hook on the fly. That's how more advanced he was.
Wow.
He was so advanced it took fishermen 25 years to catch up with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had it all figured out.
Wow.
And we don't have a Ted Trueblood now.
No. Yeah, everyone thinks they can beat it.
He was a real gentleman. You know, he would talk to us kids too. I mean, he wasn't aloof or anything. He was he was a tremendous gentleman.
Nice.
Yeah, I really admired him. The first, in fact, he got me interested in fish and wildlife. And the first article I ever read that started getting me interested is one he put in Field and Stream, where he walked into Buck Lake off a Pistol Ridge and caught these big trout and come back. And that's the first article I've read, and it got me hooked. And I thought, you know, I need to make my living outside.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. So I got a lot to thank Ted Trueblood for.
Yeah, nice. He's a pioneer. Do you remember at all when they were debating should the Sawtooths be a national park or a national recreation area?
Yeah, I had long talks with Ernie Day and Bruce Bowler at that time, and Jerry Jane. Yeah, and another guy that worked with Jerry Dane, he died later on, but tremendous individual. And I wasn't up at their level. You know, they were smart people. They knew politics, but I was enough of a scientist that once in a while they'd ask me a question or two. So
Yeah.
I felt real privileged
Yeah.
about that. Especially when I started sweeping southern Idaho with the slide series, trying to get people to get up in arms against the open pit mine in the White Clouds.
Yeah.
Yeah, then they started talking to me quite a bit.
Good. And do you think they did the right thing? That it's a national recreation area instead of a national park?
Well, it was the best alternative. I'd have liked to have seen it gone to a national park.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, the Forest Service has done a great job.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so too.
You've got to give them credit for it. I think at Sawtooth NRA is just about as good now as if it had been a national park.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, we have a little more flexibility on the hunting and fishing.
Right.
And so today, I like to see it in a national recreation better than a park. But in those days, I think I was a little bit brainwashed by Ernie Davis. So I thought, well, we need a national park because, you know, in those days I was scared to death of mining because I was working on the blackbird, and heck, they just laugh at us in the White Clouds. When I switched from the big boulder to the little big boulder drainage, I worked my way up the drainage, 7.5 miles in, and I worked my way up the drainage, and I was going to start on the lower lake and do them all. It'd take maybe a week to do it. And when I got to the meadow above Frog Lake, we were sitting over on the side of the hill, and there were some big rock cathedrals on the other side. And me and another guy were sitting there, and I think it was a guy out of Salmon. All of a sudden, one of them just blew up. And, dynamite just blew it up. So I walked up to this lake, and I said, hey, there's a big explosion on the other side, and this big, beautiful cathedrals. And I said, what's going on? He said, oh, we have a lot of dynamite left, and they're just getting rid of it.
Oh my God.
And it was a beautiful spiral. And I think the other one's still there, another 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And then I looked at, and they were putting all their garbage and effluent right into Willow Lake. At that time, I hadn't named it Willow Lake. It was number 1.
Okay.
But, and so I said, hey, you're polluting Willow Lake. And they said, well, yeah, so what? And there was probably 4 or 5 miners there. And they'd been drilling a big hole, and they'd flown in all this clay and oil and stuff with helicopters, so they had a lot of stuff in there. And I took pictures of the lake, and I still got them. The lake had just turned turbid. It was terrible. And I said, well, you can't do this. I said, I'm from the Forest Service, and I'm shutting you down. And they shut down. And he got on the radio, made 3 or 4 phone calls, and then I left. Well, 3 or 4 hours later, the guys, he got a hold of the bosses down below. They said he has no authority to keep on going. And I didn't know that, and about 2 or 3 days later, I got word they're going again and dumping all their garbage and effluent, oils and kerosene and everything into Willow Lake. And so I got in my vehicle and I headed for Pocatello, and I got hold of a guy from a state health department because I got the code out and I found out who does have the authority.
Yeah.
I found out they have authority to shut them down. So I took him in there, and we walked all the way in.
Wow.
And they were still putting the stuff in when we got there. And he said, you're shut down. And he said, I'm from the state health department. And he said, if it's a violation every day now if you don't shut down. So they called back down. They thought we kind of got to brush up. And the bosses come back and said shut down immediately. And they never put another drop into Willow Lake.
Good.
Yeah. But that's the deal, and it just got me thinking more and more, And then when I walked the meadow on Little Boulder where this massive tailings pond was going to be, and then looked under Castle Peak, I'd wander around the Castle Peak, named it. That's the ideal name for that lake.
Yeah.
Well, Noisy Quiet.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Did Noisy Lake, and wind was blowing. Did Quiet Lake, like glass, so Noisy Quiet.
Perfect.
Anyway, And I thought, you know, there's no chance in this. That's what those guys got me thinking. I got to do more than just do these lakes. I got to get back. We got to get this out to the public. The only way we're going to kill the lake, and Bruce Bowler and them had already caught on, was some grassroots support. And so that's when I started putting my slide series together. Started hitting southern Idaho.
Yeah.
If I could get it into an Elks or a Lions Club or League of Women Boaters had me 2 or 3 times. They were really good about it. So,
Yeah.
and then we built up all that support, got Andrew selected, you know,
Yeah.
and that was the end of the, you know, otherwise we wouldn't have a White Cloud
I know.
today.
Yeah.
We'd have Appalachia there.
Yeah. Yeah. Ugh. Do you still have that slide series that you put together, do you think?
No, when I left the Forest Service, I had to leave it. And the Forest Service pretty well, people have asked me a lot of stuff on the Forest Service stuff. I think I got the slides. Yeah, I got the slides that I could put back together,
Yeah.
but I don't have the narrative anymore. You know, you have a slide and then you have what you're going to say. I got it memorized, so I didn't even have to have it
Yeah.
after a few times. But I left that with the Boise Forest, I think. But since then, you know, they cleaned the files.
Yeah.
People can't find anything. I'm not so sure the lake stuff's even available anymore,
Wow.
which would be great to file away, because if another mining venture comes in up there, yeah, they need
Yeah.
to have all that background material.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hopefully it can't. Oh.
Oh, that's my puppy dog.
Oh.
You know, he's 6 months, but he grew to a monster. But he's still got a puppy brain.
I love it.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Sky. I call him Blue all the time because that's the end. My dog that died
Oh.
before I got this puppy.
Yeah.
Blue is a great dog. This one, he's about all I can handle.
Well, 6 months. He'll settle down, right?
Yeah,
Hopefully.
I'm counting on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Well, do you have any other things you want to talk about? Or I know we've been talking for a while. Yeah. And I know Gary's excited to see you this summer in Stanley, and he can always follow up with you.
yeah, I'm going to have coffee with Getaway
Good.
when I go hit this high mountain lake.
Yeah.
And Kennedy and going to do some work from the hatchery on down. Might kind of tie into that, but because my cabin is on Cascade,
Oh.
I got one right on the reservoir up there.
Okay.
And I don't get over there that much anymore.
Yeah.
I like that area better, but this is just a nice,
Yeah.
little better hunting up here than it is in
Yeah.
Sawtooth anyway, but
Me too.
the fishing over there in the country is better.
Yeah.
But I need to go back. I got it on my bucket list to go to this lake.
Yeah.
And I got it on my bucket list if I can do it. If my arthritis will let me, I want to go to Alpine once more. Because that's the first high mountain lake I ever, other than the ones down on Harrison and Independence, that's the first high mountain lake I hit in the Sawtooth.
Okay.
The first high mountain lake I've ever been to.
Yeah. Wow.
And that got me hooked on high mountain lakes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. We had no maps
Right.
in those days, and so we just searched. And I searched Alpine Lake in the first few years. That we'd hit it every year because it was such good fishing. I didn't know there was another lake in the drainage.
Oh, wow.
You know, there must
Yeah.
be 10 more lakes there.
Yep.
Some of them are better than Alpine, but I didn't know it. And then finally got a little older, started climbing. It was an annual event. We had to top Snowy Sides. I think we could see 36 lakes from Snowy Sides.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so we had to climb Snowy Sides. And I looked around, looked back down at Alpine, and here's all these other beautiful lakes we didn't know existed.
So who-
I remember this lake I'm going to, some years we didn't even find it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we had no maps or nothing.
Right.
You just That's why we walked so far getting into Sawtooth. We didn't know there was road up Orange Creek.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were there trails? Or, I mean, were you following
They
like...
had better trails then than they got now.
Really?
Oh, they're beautiful trails.
Wow.
The Forest Service had a lot better trail system in those days than they got now. They went from taking care of trails to building roads. Road, pretty soon road money got all the money and trails got hardly anything. In those days, trails got the money.
Right.
The roads in those days were being built by miners and loggers, but it reversed. And a lot of the good trail systems have gone to pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah. They just don't have, the Forest Service doesn't get near the money they need to keep good trail maintenance
No.
going. A lot of them are washing out and they don't water bore them anymore like they should. But,
Yeah.
and it's a shame, but they're doing everything they can.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really like the thoughts of this trail between Redfish and Stanley.
I think it's almost done.
Is it?
It is.
Oh, great.
You can walk it. It's.
Wow.
I think they're tied up in some legal
Yeah, I see that in the paper.
junk. But
yeah, but that seems to be getting solved.
but yeah, the trail's there. We can do
Yeah,
it.
because we thought there was a lake on the east side of, on the south side of Redfish, and we used to search for that lake when we'd go up. Finally got a map. There was no lake.
No.
Yeah, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
And we spent days over there looking for that lake. Some fisherman told us there was a lake over there that had big trout in it,
Yeah.
and he was just pulling our leg.
Wow.
And we wasted a lot of days over there.
Yeah.
Oh, one thing, that I don't think's really documented, Fishhook Creek at that time got a real nice sockeye run.
Oh.
But most of the sockeye were lake spawners. Even in those days, most of the sockeye were lake spawners. And we would walk, you go to the lodge was shut down most of my time in there. There was no, during the war, just shut off all their money supply, so they shut down for about 6-8 years.
Yeah.
So, and then the beach out in front of the lodge, and then we went around on the north shore. It's more protected over there. There's a bay, so we would stay there. But sometimes when, especially about the 1st of August, when the lake spawning got going good, we could walk around the edge of the lake, cross Redfish Lake Creek, and around on the other side, and just as you made the turn to go to the southeast side of the lake, there was a stretch in there that the sockeye like to spawn.
Oh, wow.
And you could see the red bands out in there.
Wow. Yeah.
But that's when they had a lot of sockeye, yeah.
Right.
I can imagine what it was like. Well, Bonneville didn't bother sockeye. Bonneville was a very fish-friendly dam. Bonneville went in one year before they blew Sunbeam out.
Okay.
And so, but Bonneville, no sportsman at Bonneville on the original plan, they were going to get rid of all the salmon in the Columbia Snake River system. There were no fish ladders.
Yeah.
And then the commercial fishery at that time was so powerful in Congress that they demanded if Bonneville was to be beat, it would be built, there would be fish ladders. And they won out. The Corps was not going to put fish ladders in, which would have eliminated the whole Columbia River system.
Yeah.
But Bonneville had beautiful fish ladders.
Okay.
I mean, they were built almost to perfection.
Yeah.
And because it was a run of the river dam,
Right.
it didn't stop. In those days, a smolt leaving the Decker Flat area, leaving Frenchman Creek, in just a few weeks would be in the ocean.
Yeah.
Nowadays, it might take them 2 months to get there.
Right.
And it's completely eliminated their chance of really maturing well in the estuary systems before they go to the ocean.
Yeah.
They got to make a tremendous change going from fresh to salt.
Right.
And so the whole thing is stacked against them now. But still, you could have really good sockeye runs and Chinook runs if it wasn't for the 4 Snake River dams.
Yeah.
You could keep them going.
Yeah.
And then hopefully the Dalles is not a good dam. hopefully then learn a lot more and do a lot more on the other 4 dams and make them much more fish friendly, and then that would really keep the Snake River, Salmon River sockeyes going.
Yeah.
The Snake River, I still believe the Snake River had more fish than the Salmon River salmon at one time. Because I counted the last of the reds in the Snake River from Huntington to Swan Falls Dam. And then they spawned real heavily from Swan Falls clear to Arger Falls, and then up the Salmon River, the Jarbish, the Bruno,
Yeah.
the Waihe, the Powder, the other big one over there. But when I counted the reds, and when they put in Jackson and Island Park and Minidoka and all those, and shut the Snake River down to where it couldn't move gravel anymore, those reds would run all the way across the river as far as you could see.
Wow.
And I've never seen anything that massive. It was even bigger than the Hanford Reach
Wow.
for salmon.
Yeah.
And I still think we had such tremendous fall Chinook runs in those days
Yeah.
that the fall Chinook may have had more numbers than the spring Chinook in the
Wow.
Salmon River system. Plus they had a spring run too.
Right.
They didn't have a summer run, but they had well, maybe you could call the Weezer and the Pay had a summer run, I don't know. But then the Boise, they had all that spawning territory.
Yeah.
And now I got off the point. What I wanted to do was talk about a problem in the Salmon River.
Well, I want to hear about it all. It's all
I don't remember what it was.
connected.
There was a problem in the Salmon River that really shut off something, and I've lost it. I lose
Me
a lot
too.
of things nowadays.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, these have been tremendous stories, so thank you.
Yeah, I can't think of much else that would
Okay.
be of much value.
Yeah, no, this is perfect, and we can always follow up
Yeah.
if we need to.